Hi, I'm Phil. This is Phil with Phacts, and today we are making a cherry chocolate blend. Well, what is Bland? Bland was a traditional Scottish drink introduced by the Vikings, and it really died down in the mid-20th century. It was never commercialized. However, it's a wine that's made from whey. Whey is a byproduct of milk. When you separate milk, you have curds and whey. The curds typically become cheese. The whey, if you ferment it, becomes bland. So it's a great use for something, especially if you're a cheesemaker or if that's a hobby of yours and you're not really sure what to do with all the extra whey. Bland. However, for our purposes, we're going to start flavoring it and seeing exactly what extremes we can make from it. I'm curious to see what flavors do what when you introduce them to Bland, such as cherry chocolate. I'm sure other flavors will come along as well. I'm not going to go step by step on how to make whey in this video, but if you're curious, I have another video where I made Bland step by step, including separating the milk from the curds and the whey. So, how often does this happen to you? You're sitting here making a wonderful cup of chocolate milk, got your syrup, giving it a nice little stir. You go take your first sip and you start to think, wow, that's delicious, but I wish it was alcoholic. Not quite. So today we're making a cherry chocolate blend. If you saw my last video on Bland, it came out amazing. It's one of my favorite brews, and now I want to start playing around with it and seeing what other flavors I could add to it. If you haven't seen my last video on Bland, you should go check it out right now. It was really good. Alright, so what we're going to need is 2 gallons of milk. If you can't get non-pasteurized or non-homogenized, if you basically live in a city and all you have is a regular gallon of milk that has been pasteurized, has been homogenized, it's fine. If you can get it that's not, that's also fine. That's probably a little bit more preferred, however, I can't get it. If you're in the UK, you probably have a slightly different gallon of milk, but that's okay too. We're still going to aim for about 1.5 gallons because I want about 1 gallon of final product, and I know that when you make Bland and the curds and the whey start to separate, you end up with less product. You're also going to need 20 ounces of cherry preserves. I know, I said preserves. Why am I using preserves? One, my local market didn't have frozen cherries. That's normally my go-to. Cherries aren't in season right now, so I can't just go to the store and buy fresh. Although if I did go to the store and buy fresh, I'd still freeze them because that's how that works. This is going to give me a nice, rich cherry flavor. It's almost going to be like a caramelized cherry, which I think is going to go really nice with this dessert type blend. We're going to use cacao nibs because you do not want to ferment chocolate syrup. You're going to need enough lemons to make about 1 cup of lemon juice. We're going to have a cinnamon stick thrown in there, and a little bit of honey and a little bit of sugar. I know in my last blend I didn't use honey. This time I'm going to use a little honey to see how that changes things. I want this to be a slightly sweeter one that's going to have some honey characteristics, a nice dessert type blend. So to get started, we're going to turn our milk into whey. Going to take about 1.5 gallons of milk. I'm going to bring it up to a nice simmer. I'm going to add 1 cup of lemon juice, and I'm going to separate the curds and the whey. Once that's done, I'll see you guys back here. Okay, so for today's blend, I have my 1.5 gallons. It's actually not, because it was 1.5 gallons of milk. So I have considerably less whey now. I actually got a big container that I kept all the curds in. Maybe we'll play around with some cheese ideas. I'm not sure yet. You'll know it's good when it has like this greenish hue to it. As it brews, it gets so green, it's almost out of this world. A little concerning, but you know, you stick through it, you let it do its course, and you get a great product. If you're not sure how to get whey from milk, watch my previous blend video. I'll link it in the description below. There's a lot of good information in there. I'm just not going to do an entire tutorial on how to make whey every single time we make blend. Alright. So to start, situate your bucket on your scale. Make sure your spoon isn't messing up the... Perfect. And weigh out 2 pounds of sugar. Then stop stressing your scale, because you don't want to do that. Now I'm going to add about 1.5 pounds of honey, which is perfect because it's this entire container. Why honey? You know, in my last blend video, I used all sugar, and that blend came out fantastic. This time, I want to try a little bit of honey, see if there's a noticeable sweetness difference in the blends. Now, the good thing is, my whey is still rather hot. So using a little bit of warm whey, I can get the remainder of the honey out. Still a little. That should be good. Now, before I forget, everything that's touching our brew today has been sanitized. I use Star San to sanitize. It's a food grade safe sanitizer. I recommend you use one too. Any microbes or dangerous bacterias or anything like that that might be on the surface of your brewing vessels or anything like that, the Star San will kill. It's just a nice little safety net to make sure that the only microbes in this brew are the ones you put in there yourself, such as your yeast. Alright, now that I have the sugar and the honey in here, get the rest of my whey. If your whey looks a little milky, don't worry. All of that will settle out into the bottom of the fermenter bucket. It's going to be okay. But I did say this is a cherry chocolate blend, so maybe it's time we add our cherries. I'm going to add 2 containers. It's 20 ounces. I can't see my fork, but here it is. Now, as I said, if you want to use equivalent, you can use about 1.5 pounds of frozen cherries, or more if you want to add more. You know what? I'm going to start with 15 pounds. And then I'm going to take a hydrometer reading and see what it gives me. Alright, so we're going to stir this all up. Dissolve all those sugars the best you can in a bucket. The fact that this is a warmer liquid makes this a whole lot easier. And get across, like do a nice little zigzag pattern across the bottom. Don't just whirlpool it, because they're going to keep sugars in the center. You want to make sure you get every little bit. Now my concern came in because now I'm thinking when I wrote this recipe, I wrote it for frozen cherries, and I'm using a much higher concentration of sugars in a preserve, which is why I used less preserves, but this is why we have a hydrometer. We're going to take a quick measurement, make sure we're not making an unreasonable gravity for our sugars to eat. Once it starts floating, it's good enough. What are you reading at? You know what? I'm at a 1.100 right now, so we're gonna stay firm at 15 ounces of the cherry jelly, because I'm also adding about 2 ounces of chopped dried cherries and about another 2 ounces of our cocoa nibs, which is going to be our cocoa flavor, our chocolate flavor in our chocolate cherry blend. And in case too many more sugars leach out of these dried cherries, or maybe there's some bigger chunks of jelly, which I know there is, we don't want to push our yeast to the point where they can't handle the sugars in our blend. So we're going to stop right there, and we're going to add our dried cherries and cocoa nibs. Alright, let's stir this around a little bit more, get everything incorporated. And then we're going to take a temperature, because this feels to me like it might still be a little too warm to add yeast. You don't want to pitch yeast above around 100 degrees. Above 110, you just plain kill it. Alright, and we made it to the final facts. So today we made a cherry chocolate blend, which is essentially a Whey wine that we added cherry jam and cocoa nibs to, which is going to give it a very interesting flavor. Honestly, the initial blend I made was so good that I have nothing but high hopes for this. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think once it finishes fermenting, it's going to be a great product. You don't really see that many blends out there, so I'm probably going to put together a few more recipes that I think will go good with that crisp, refreshing bite that the blend has. This is going to be something very nostalgic, very comforting, and I think it's going to be a great time. Anyway guys, if you like this video, please check out some of my other ones. They're all pretty good. Like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that little bell icon. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them below. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Until next time, guys. That was awkward and terrible. Alright, now once you got everything all mixed up and put together, you're going to add our last ingredient, which is going to be 1 cinnamon stick. Now, cinnamon and cherry play really well together in homebrew. Something about the fermentation process for the two of them, just they go hand in hand. So if I'm going to make something with cherry, I often throw a cinnamon stick in just for the fun of it. I know it's a combination that works, that's why I do it. So now that this is cooled down to a good temperature, everything's mixed in properly, and I used a batch calculator to kind of figure out about how much gravity my chopped cherries are going to add. I'm looking at, if you add, it's going to be a 1.110, which is perfect, exactly what I was hoping for. That's going to give us, if this was to go completely dry, it's going to give us a 14.5% beverage. Now, today I'm using Lalvin 71B, which is a 14% yeast. If it does its job and brings us to 14%, it's going to give me some residual sweetness, which is perfect. It's exactly what I want. I'm going to use the whole packet today to sprinkle it on nicely. Give this one final stir. Now, there's a lot of air in this right now, which is good. It's what you want. The first few days, you want to get a lot of oxygen into your must. After the first few days, you don't. So normally what I do is for the first 2 or 3 days, I'll give this a good swirl. Get everything mixed up and going. After 2 or 3 days, I stop doing it. But that's essentially how you start it. So now we put the lid on. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Make sure the airlock is good. Once that's done, I'll see you guys at the final Phacts. And we made it to the final Phacts. So today we made a blend. We added cherries and chocolate. So it's going to be this really nice, comforting, nostalgic type of drink at the end. I had a lot of fun, and based on the way the first blend came out, I have nothing but high expectations for this one. I think it's going to be fantastic. But you know what? Only time will tell. We'll let it ferment for a month, give it a taste, and see where we're at. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please check out some of my others. If you want, give me a like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. You can leave me any questions, comments, or concerns you have. If you do ask a question, I'll make sure I get to it as soon as possible. Anyway guys, thank you so much, and until next time, cheers.